Former President Donald Trump appeared in a Manhattan courtroom yesterday and was officially charged in that case involving hush money payments to an adult film actress. But what do those charges mean, and what's next for Trump? Joining us now is Harvard Law professor and best-selling author Alan Dershowitz. Alan, thanks for joining us here on the morning show.
Thank you.
Alan, you've defended plenty of cases over the years. How much trouble do you think Trump is in here?
Well, you know, I wrote a book about this about a month ago. It's just been on the bestseller lists now. Get Trump. In the book, I go through every one of the cases against him, and I analyze them based on my 60 years of experience. And I conclude that the case in New York is by far the weakest case. The case in Florida is by far the strongest case, but politically is difficult because obviously Joe Biden and Vice President Pence also had classified material. But the case in New York, it simply has no basis in fact or in law. As I demonstrate in my book, Get Trump, let me explain to you what the theory is. And I've now confirmed it, obviously, by reading the indictment in the case very carefully. Here's the government's theory, that when Trump paid $130,000 to assure the silence, hush money, to assure the silence of a former porn star so as to prevent embarrassment to his wife. When that hush money was paid, Trump immediately had an obligation to file a report on his public corporate records explaining the actual reason why he paid the hush money. In other words, he pays the hush money to make sure it doesn't come out. Then immediately he has to make a public disclosure of why he paid the hush money. Has anyone in the history of the United States ever done that? Will anyone in the history of the United States ever pay hush money and then make full disclosure of the reason he paid the hush money? That is absurd. And that's the theory underlying the entire 34-count indictment in this case.
They do allege that he set up shell companies, though, or that his team
Perfectly
did.
Lawful.
Is
perfectly shell companies, look, lawyers make living setting up shell companies. NDAs, how many NDAs has Fox and NBC had employees sign? How many prominent people have paid hush money? None of that is illegal. The only thing that the government, that the state claims is illegal is not then putting on your corporate form the actual reason you paid the $130,000. It's unheard of. It's never happened since Alexander Hamilton paid hush to prevent a woman who was extorting him from disclosing his adulterous affair.
There are plenty of people who are trivializing these charges, but the district attorney said that his office, being in the financial capital of the country, in Manhattan, is always prosecuting this type of crime. So his argument is, why should the former president be absolved from that prosecution?
Because he's not telling the truth to the American public. I've issued a challenge. I'll repeat the challenge. DA Bragg, I challenge you to come up with a single case in the history of the New York DA's office in which a person was indicted for failing to disclose on a corporate form the fact that he paid hush money to cover up an adulterous affair. Take up my challenge. That's what you say. Give me one case where that happened. It's never happened. Why? Think about it logically. Why would anybody ever pay hush money if he knew that the next day he had to file a public report saying, oh, by the way, I paid hush money to prevent this adulterous affair from coming out? Duh. Why would anybody ever do that? So DA Bragg did not accurately inform. Of course there are records cases. Of course there are cases where people cheat for millions and millions of dollars, but there's not a single victim in this case. Certainly Stormy Daniels is not a victim. She was an extortionist. Surely the American public didn't lose anything. Banks didn't lose anything. Nobody lost anything. So I think Bragg, put up or shut up. Come up with a case. Show us a case. These are public records. You have the public records. Show us when you ever indicted somebody for not disclosing.
You talk about no victims. I mean, there are going to be some arguments that the American public wasn't fully aware of what was going on because of these hush money payments leading into the election. But how damaging do you think it is, if at all, that there are people who were involved who are willing to testify against Trump? Is that a problem for him?
I think it's a benefit if one of the people is Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen has lied to his lawyers, lied to the federal government, lied to virtually everybody. And if that's the strength of the case, Michael Cohen, any good lawyer is going to have a picnic tearing the credibility of that witness apart. Look, I don't think there's going to be a lot of dispute about the fact the money was paid. But maybe there'll be a dispute about whether there was, in fact, an adulterous affair. That's not particularly relevant because you can pay hush money based on an accusation, even if the accusation isn't true. The big question is, as a matter of law, are you obliged to disclose in a public forum the fact that you paid hush money to prevent an embarrassing private adulterous affair to be made public? That's the issue.
Do you think that this sets any sort of precedent for future political prosecutions? I mean, we've heard it from both sides, people saying, does this open up a bevy of other cases? If someone has any sort of political inclination, they can go after someone from the opposite side. And I'm not saying that's what happened here, but I know that's an assertion by many. Do you worry if you put on your professorial hat? Is that a legitimate concern, or is that just a bunch of kind of rhetoric?
Look, I named my book, Get Trump, not because I'm so creative about titles. It's not about Trump. It's about the fact that today it's Trump, tomorrow it's a Democrat, the next day it's your Uncle Charlie. If prosecutors are allowed to target people, remember again what Bragg did. He ran for office as a Democrat in a highly Democratic borough, promising to get Trump. He gets elected. He then gets Trump. Now he's going to have a jury consisting of people who voted for him on the platform of getting Trump. Is that justice? This case clearly should be moved to Staten Island or Long Island or another part of New York where Bragg didn't run for office on a promise to get Trump. That's the problem, the deepest problem in this case. And I can just see DAs all over the country now, Republican DAs, rummaging through records to see if they can find something on Hunter Biden, find something on Joe Biden, something on Hillary Clinton. Prosecutors now have lost the constraint that tradition used to impose on them. You know, never in American history has a former president been indicted. The former vice president was Aaron Burr. And we've never had a current candidate for office, for presidency, being indicted while he's running for office by a member of the other political party who promised to get him as part of his campaign. That's what's so unique about this case and so dangerous in terms of a precedent for the future. You know, a dictator once in the Central America said, "For my friends, everything. For my enemies, the law." And Lavrenti Beria said to Stalin, "Show me the man and I'll find you the crime." That's the kind of country we don't want to ever become. And we took a tiny step, just a tiny step, in that direction yesterday.
All right, Professor Dershowitz, thanks so much for joining us here on the National Desk. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you.